The post office line moved at the speed of a porch swing, slow creaking neighborly. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead. Somewhere behind the counter, a small radio whispered an old announcer's baritone about Veterans Day events on the square. Marin Cole stood with a stamped envelope in his hand. Coat collar frayed the outline of a faded unit patch, showing through the wool like a pressed leaf under glass. "Morning, Mr. Cole," said the clerk. Marin tipped 2 fingers. "Morning." Sarah Whitman stepped in from the sidewalk, hair lifted by the cool November air, a paper bag of napkins tucked to her ribs. "Marin, you need anything from the diner before the parade?" "Coffee, I've got a thermos." "I'm all right, Sarah," he said. The radio crackled. Marching band steps off at 10 flag detail at the west lawn. Sarah's voice softened. "You heading down? I'll be there," he answered. A grandfather in a seed cap turned. "Crowd'll be good this year. The Admiral's in town, they say." "So I heard," Marin said. The door hissed open. A gust slipped through, smelling of dust and cinnamon rolls from the bakery. A cluster of Academy cadets clattered past the windows in bright jackets, laughing elbows, knocking each other's ribs as they moved toward the green. One boy mimed lifting a bugle. Another bowed to applause that came from nowhere. The radio kept talking upcoming lunch specials, a church bake sale, while stamps thumped and tape tore. Sarah handed Marin a pastry napkin as if it were a small shield. "Winds up. Keep warm." "Thank you." Outside flags along Main Street worried their clips. Drums already tested skins on the square, thump, 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 like a heart learning to trust its own beat. Moran walked out with the others. The cold carried the smell of leaves and brass polish. He folded the envelope into his pocket and buttoned his coat. The patch under that coat lay flat and quiet. He patted it once the way some folks pat a family Bible before traveling. On the parade field, chalk lines ghosted the grass. Vendors set up paper cups of cocoa. Children chased one another in the alleys of camp chairs. Sarah drifted toward the diner tent, where a tip jar glowed amber under a clamp lamp. Marin took his place near the back where the view was honest, and the noise landed like birds and flew off again. "Is that him?" a cadet whispered, not too quietly. "The old guy with the thrift store coat." Another grinned. "Bet he salutes slower than dial-up." "Hey," Sarah said, not looking up from a stack of cups, "mind your manners." Marin watched the color guard assemble. The drumline knocked off an easy roll. It settled the crowd like rain on a tin roof. He squared his feet on the chalk, lifted his chin, and raised his right hand. No flourish, no theater. The angle of the palm was true. His fingertips hovered near the brim that wasn't there anymore. A cadet snorted. "Look at that museum piece. Come on, Grandpa." Another called you missing your hat or your clock. Laughter pinballed thin and bright. Sarah set down the cups. "Hush," she told them. "Some things you don't mock." A boy cupped his hands and gave a parody salute, all elbows and wobble. "Attention," he squeaked, cartoon stiff. Marin held his own hand steady. For a breath he was not on grass, but in a wind that smelled of dust and diesel a world away, another November. He lowered his hand slowly and placed it over his coat where the fabric pressed the old patch close. "Look," a cadet murmured. "He hugs his jacket like it's gonna run off." Sarah moved closer to Marin's shoulder. "Pay them no mind," she said. He nodded once. "They're learning." "From the wrong teacher," she said. The drums tightened into a cadence. Flags along the street snapped and rustled as if they meant to speak, and then thought better of it. A stroller rolled past with a squeak. Cocoa steamed into the bright air. Marin's breath made little puffs he could almost pocket for later. One of the cadets edged forward theatrically solemn. "Sir," he intoned permission to giggle while saluting. "You can laugh all you like," Sarah said. "Just be sure you know what you're laughing at." The boy shrugged. "It's a free country." A little girl no higher than a snare drum tugged her mother's sleeve. "Mama, why they laughing at that man?" Her mother knelt. Sometimes people don't understand what they see. The old radio voice floated from the diner tent, where someone had turned up the volume. Honor is often quiet, and sometimes it stands at the back of the crowd. A cadet rolled his eyes. Poetry hour. Sarah looked at Marin. "You want me to say something to their captain?" He shook his head. "No need." She studied his face, the calm that had lines in it like a well-used map. "Then let me at least say this out loud so somebody hears it." She stepped a half-pace forward, near enough for her words to land where they needed to. Who laughs when a patch carries a whole story? The nearest cadets went still, not because they agreed, but because the sentence had weight. The drumline's cadence paused as the drum major lifted his mace. The air seemed to hold its breath. Marin smiled a little. "Thank you, Sarah." "Don't thank me," she said. "Just keep standing." The color guard commander called orders. Leather slings creaked. The wind eased and then returned like an old friend. On the far end of the field, the academy band lined up silver bell fronts, winking. Behind them, volunteers straightened banners until the words faced true service. Honor, community. The cadet who'd mocked the loudest glanced at those words, and then at Marin. His mouth tightened into something almost like thought. Whatever he muttered, but it held less heat. A siren whooped once down Main Startle, then quiet. Heads turned instinctively toward the courthouse corner. Over the low hum of the crowd came a different sound, engines smooth, decisive, not hurrying because they never had to. Black sedans took the turn beyond the bandstand lights, ghosting across storefront windows, flags flaring as if saluting on their own. "The motorcade," someone said. "They're here." Sarah lifted her chin. "Well then." Marin's fingers inside his pocket found the envelope again. He pressed it flat, as if to smooth a wrinkle he could not name. He felt the shape of the old patch beneath his coat, quiet, as a prayer stitched shut. The band raised horns. The drum major brought the mace down. The first note of the anthem swelled from brass and reeds spilling like sunlight between the trees. In the brief space before the melody settled, the cadets stood very straight and very young, not yet aware of how quickly this morning would become a story, they told in softer voices. Admiral's motorcade approached, unaware of what had just happened. The VA clinic waiting room smelled faintly of antiseptic and winter coats. A wall clock ticked with the patience of a metronome. Somewhere near reception, a radio scratched through an oldies station, the announcer's voice warm as a quilt. Marin sat beneath a poster that promised flu shots and community hours. He kept his hands folded, thumbs touching eyes on the floor tiles that had been polished by 1,000 careful shoes. The patch under his coat pressed a gentle square against his chest, quiet as a folded letter. "Thought that was you," a voice said, dust-dry and friendly. Marin looked up. Raymond Ortiz, lean as a fence rail, stood with a paper cup of water. His hair had gone mostly silver. His grin still belonged to a man who had talked others across hard bridges. Ray Maran said, "You keeping out of trouble always." Ortiz chuckled. "Or at least I try to keep it from finding me." They sat side by side. The clock kept time. The radio offered a verse about walking the line and coming home. Ortiz glanced at Marin's coat, eyes resting on a shape the wool couldn't hide. "That patch still where you keep it?" he asked softly. Marin shifted just enough. It's a habit. A good one, Ortiz said. If a thing holds you upright, you don't toss it. Marin breathed out. It holds names. Ortiz nodded. I figured. A nurse passed Shu's quiet chart in hand. The door sighed open, then closed with a rubber kiss. The two men let the room settle around them like dust after a long step. You hear the band this morning? Ortiz asked. I did, Marin said. They sounded steady. Some of those academy kids could use steadier hearts, Ortiz said. Word got to me about the field. Marin offered a small smile. Kids are wind. They blow and pass. Wind can cut too, Ortiz said. But I'm not here to salt it. He touched his paper cup. I saw the way your hand went to your coat. Marin stared at his boots. Old reflex. Old reverence, Ortiz said. There's a difference. The clock ticked. The radio faded into a commercial for tire rotations and a church rummage sale. A receptionist stapled a packet, each click neat as a footfall. Ortiz lowered his voice. You never told them, did you? Not the article, not the citation, not the letter nobody ever mailed. I didn't do it for articles, Maureen said. Besides, most of it belonged to others. Ortiz studied him. You still carry the ledger. Maureen touched his coat. Somebody should. Sure, Ortiz said. But you don't have to carry it alone. He leaned back. You remember that Patch's story, don't you? I remember the people, Maran said. And the crest, Ortiz said. People forget crests were drawn by hands that knew storms. Maran smiled without showing teeth. Now you sound like the radio. Radio's got a point now and then, Ortiz said. That rectangle on your chest is not thread. It's a map. Folks think it's fabric because fabric is easier to ignore. Marin looked toward the window. Bare branches scratched a gray sky. Maps don't matter if no one cares where they lead. They matter to the ones who walked them, Ortiz said, and to the ones they saved. Marin's jaw cleared and set again. Saved is a big word, Ray. So is took credit. Ortiz said the words gentle and sharp at once. Marin turned. We're not doing that. I'm not naming anyone, Ortiz said. But I was there when the paper came out. I saw which photo got framed and who stood in front of it. Marin kept his voice level. What would saying it change? Maybe nothing. Ortiz said. Maybe it lets the right story breathe. Maybe a kid stops laughing on a field. Marin swallowed. I don't need my name in mouths. I know, Ortiz said. I'm not talking about yours. The radio played a bass line that walked like an old friend. The clock continued faithfully. A man across the room coughed into his elbow, a small apology to the air. Ortiz nodded at Marin's coat. That was the unit that turned back on mile 9. You kept the road open. We never said it out loud, not all of it. You took the last stretch because the call sheet put your name there in pencil. Marin blinked once. Names in pencil mean you can erase them, or you can trace them in ink. Ortiz replied. We both know who held the middle when the middle broke. We both know who showed up at the banquet after with that easy grin and those clean hands. Marin exhaled patience and pain braided together. Let him have his photographs. He already had them, Ortiz said. That doesn't mean he gets this patch or the weight of it. His voice thinned. You remember the letter he sent your way, how it said leadership is knowing when not to speak? Marin nodded. I remember the stamp. Ortiz's mouth made a line. Leadership is also knowing when to tell truth before it slips under the door. A nurse called a name that wasn't theirs. A machine somewhere beeped twice and then returned to silence. The room's heat vents sighed. Marin stood. "Let's get air." They stepped outside onto the small porch that ran the clinic's western wall. A wooden swing hung their chains polished by palms. Ortiz sat first. Marin joined him. The swing creaked like a story told every evening at the same hour. "Feels better," Ortiz said. "That room holds too much memory." "Memory sits anywhere it wants," Marin said. "True," Ortiz replied, "but it sits softer out here." They listened to leaves scuff along the brick walk. The sky burned off a thin cloud and brightened. On the road, a pickup eased by its bed, strapped with bundled flags. "I've known you a long time," Ortiz said. "Long enough to know your quiet isn't pride." "It's the only speed I got left," Marin said. Maybe Ortiz said, "But silence can look like consent when folks don't know better." Marin folded his hands again. "You want me to march into a microphone, correct the record in the middle of the square?" "I want you to let the patch speak," Ortiz said. "Not with a stage, with a steward." Marin glanced over. "A steward?" "A younger set of hands," Ortiz said. "Somebody who can carry it without the ghosts climbing on." Marin stared at the swing's chain. "You think that girl from the meeting would understand?" Lily Ortiz nodded. She asked the right question. People who ask the right question tend to hear the right answer. Marin's voice went low. "If the answer hurts, then it teaches," Ortiz said. "That's its job." They swung a few inches. The porch boards whispered under them. The radio, even through the wall, found a new tune, strings brushed drums, a singer who lilted as if she had time to spare. Ortiz touched his chest exactly where Marin's patch rested under the coat. "I recognized it the second you turned. Legendary doesn't do it. That unit kept folks alive while the map got rewritten under their boots." Marin shook his head. "It was all of us." And yet Ortiz said, "And yet some stood when standing was the last thing left." Marin cleared his throat. "Folks like the Admiral know the truth. Folks like the Admiral know the smell of brass polish," Ortiz said, smiling. "Truth is something he sees when someone holds it up." Marin pressed his palm flat to his coat. "I am not a banner, Ray." "No," Ortiz said. "You're a door." He let that sit. "You can open or you can let someone else open with your key." Marin's gaze followed a gust lifting a newspaper across the sidewalk. "Keys get lost. Then we tie a ribbon to it," Ortiz said. "We keep looking until we find the right hand." The clinic door clicked behind them. A volunteer carried out a box of donated scarves, each one labeled in careful script. The swing creaked once more, steady as breath. Ortiz stood. "I'm headed back in for my appointment. You do what you always do, think twice, and walk straight." Marin rose with him. "I'll be around." Ortiz squeezed his shoulder. His palm was warm. "You don't have to say a word," he said. "That patch still speaks whether you do or not." The diner's back room smelled of coffee syrup and old wood. A single clamp lamp washed the tip jar in honeyed light. Plates chimed in the kitchen. Somewhere up front, the bell above the door chimed a lazy note. Sarah set a carafe on a folding table. "Cups are clean. Refills on me." Victor Kane stood near the whiteboard, sleeves pressed, tie pinned like a medal. "We'll keep this meeting brief," he said. "Parade review, then recognition protocol. No distractions." Lily Tran slipped in, shoulders squared the way cadets are taught. She carried a notebook and a pen that clicked with nervous fingers. Marin took a chair against the wall, hands folded, coat buttoned. The faded rectangle under that coat sat where it always did, quiet, steady, close. Kane scanned the room. Attendance noted. Miss Whitman, thank you for hosting. Mr. Cole, you are welcome to observe. Sarah poured coffee. Everyone here gets a voice, she said. Kane smiled a thin smile. Some voices will be more helpful than others. The clink of cups traveled like a small train around the table. The tip jar glowed. Lily took a seat across from Maran and tried not to stare. She failed. Her gaze landed on the worn line where thread had once met sun. Sarah noticed. Cream, she asked Lily. Yes, please, Lily said. Kane tapped his marker. First item, speaker order. The Admiral will conclude. Before that, I will introduce the theme of service and national pride. We'll avoid unnecessary specifics. Unnecessary to whom, Sarah asked. To the program's flow, Kane said. We are honoring the whole, not reopening files. Lily cleared her throat. Sir, could the committee add a brief acknowledgement for what Kane said? Be precise. For the unit represented by Mr. Cole's patch, Lily said. Some of us should know what it stands for. Kane capped the marker with a soft click. Miss Tran, you are here as a junior liaison, not a historian. Sarah refilled Moran's cup without asking. She's asking for context, Sarah said. Context keeps us honest. Kane's voice stayed smooth. Context in public becomes controversy. We don't need that today. Lily looked at Marin. May I ask you a question, oh, sir? Marine met her eyes. He didn't speak. Something like permission moved across his face, quiet, as a nod played in reverse. Kane stepped between them. Miss Tran, your chain of communication is through me. I meant a simple question, Lily said. What did that unit do? It's a sewing project, Kane said. Old cloth. Sentimental value. Sarah set the carafe down harder than she meant to. It's more than cloth. Kane turned. Miss Whitman, stay in your lane. My lane is this room, she said, and the people in it. The kitchen door swung. A stack of plates clattered. Someone laughed out front, then hushed. Marin's coffee steamed in the yellow light. Lily steadied her pen. Mr. Cole. I saw cadets laughing this morning. I laughed at things I didn't understand when I was younger. I don't want to keep doing that. Marin's hand moved to his coat, then rested on the table. He said nothing. His silence felt like a hand extended palm up. Kane spread his notes. Second item, he said, commendations. We have a list of names to mention. Mine appears reluctantly, only because the organizers insisted. Of course, Sarah murmured. Lily glanced at the list. Sir, there's no entry for Mr. Cole. Kane smiled again. Mr. Cole prefers privacy. Marin's eyes stayed on the tabletop grain. The wood had a scar shaped like a river bend. Sarah folded a napkin into a square. Privacy isn't the same as erasure, nor is ceremony the same as truth, Kane said. We deal in ceremony here. Lily leaned forward. Sir, respectfully, teenagers follow what we model. If we model silence where there should be respect, we teach contempt. Kane's tone cooled. Miss Tran, the parade is not a seminar. It's a classroom either way, Lily said. People learn from what we lift up. Enough, Kane said. I control the microphone. We will proceed as planned. Sarah's eyebrows rose. You control the microphone? Kane didn't blink. Yes. Lily looked to Marin again. If you won't speak, sirs, would you let me ask a different question? Marin's lips moved around a breath. He gave the smallest yes that could still be seen. What does the patch mean to the people who wore it? Lily asked. Kane laughed quick and dry. It means retirement. It means coffee in a back room. Sarah's voice was soft. It means some of us got to come home. Kane capped and uncapped the marker. We are drifting. Item 3, placement of the honor guard. After my introduction, your introduction, Sarah said. As master of ceremonies, Kane replied. Who appointed you, master? Sarah asked. Kane's smile thinned. Competence did. The kitchen pass window slid open. A plate of rolls landed with a hopeful thud. The smell of butter and heat blurred the edges of the moment. Lily reached for a roll and forgot to eat it. She turned to Marin. Did your unit carry a motto? Marin looked at his hands. At last he answered with one small sentence. We carried each other. Lily wrote that down. The pen shook the tiniest bit. Sarah exhaled. Kane clapped his hands once. There. Everyone happy. We've recognized sentiment. Now we move on. Recognized or contained, Sarah asked. Managed, Kane said. That is my work today. Lily set her pen down. Sir, may I propose a single change? You may not, Kane said. Then I'll ask as a citizen, Lily said. Would you allow the patch to be seen? Not paraded. Just seen. Kane's eyes slid to Marin's coat. Props cheapen a ceremony. It's not a prop, Sarah said. It's a witness, Lily added. Kane straightened. Miss Tran, you are very young. Yes, sir, Lily said. That's why I need to see what matters. Kane shook his head. We are done here. Final item, photo staging. I'll stand to the Admiral's right, the cadet captain to his left. Mr. Cole, you may remain seated in the veterans' row. Marin said nothing. His gaze drifted to the lamp where dust swirled like quiet confetti. Lily gathered her notebook. May I walk Mr. Cole out? You may go where you like, Kane said, but return on time and in order. Sarah lifted the carafe again. Refill. No thanks, Lily said. She stood. Mr. Cole Marin rose, coat falling straight. The chair's legs scuffed the old floor, a soft apology for moving. They stepped into the narrow hallway. The diner's front murmured with forks and pie plates. The doorbell chimed as a couple left their laughter harmless as rain. In the dim spill from the back room, Lily stopped and faced him. Her voice came out steadier than she felt. Sir, may I ask closer? I won't touch. Marin nodded once. She leaned in. The outline under the wool was clearer here, stitched edges long faded, a geometry that hinted at storms and crossings. She didn't know the crest, not really, but she knew reverence when it thrummed in the air. What does it ask of us? She whispered. Marin's answer was inside the look he gave her, the small transfer that happens when one person trusts another with something fragile. He didn't speak. He didn't have to. They could still hear Kane in the back room rehearsing the program, as if it were a ladder he alone could climb. Sarah's voice, low and level, cut through now and then like a bell that refuses to crack. Lily wrote one more line in her notebook, the letters careful. She closed it and held it to her chest. Her whisper barely stirred the air. Why are they afraid of this patch? Note ch4 phi die nyut theo hardlock. Toi trian kai voi w plan 150 vadoitwai 40%. Late afternoon laid a warm coin of light across the parade stage. Brass gleamed, flags breathed. The drumline held a restful cadence, one measure on a loop, like a heartbeat waiting for news. Townsfolk filled the square, coats zipped, faces upturned. Children shifted from foot to foot, sensing importance without knowing the words for it. Marin stood near the steps, coat buttoned, hatless, steady as a mile marker. Lily came to him from the wing's notebook at her side. Her eyes searched his, not for permission, so much as for trust already given. "Sir," she said quietly, "may I carry it?" Marin rested a hand over the faded square beneath his coat. He did not speak right away. A breeze moved through the rigging and made the bunting nod. He unbuttoned the top 2 buttons with careful fingers. The old patch lay exactly where his palm knew it would. Its edges were soft with years, its colors cured by sun and grit into something deeper than paint. He lifted it into both hands. "This belongs to many," he said. "I know," Lily answered. He tipped the patch toward her, a small bow, from one keeper to the next. "Then carry it, as if the many are listening." She extended her hands. The transfer was simple, reverent, and real, an object moving, and with it a weight that wasn't heavy until you knew it. The drumline's measure stopped. The sudden quiet fell like snow. Sarah stood near the diner tent, fingers around a carafe. She did not breathe for 3 beats. Ortiz had found the front row of the veterans section. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees, eyes bright and tired at once. At center stage, the master of ceremonies tapped the microphone. Victor Kane's voice rolled out smooth as shellac. "Neighbors and friends," he said, "we gather to honor service and national pride. We are blessed today by the presence of our distinguished guest of honor, Admiral." A small murmur rose as the Admiral approached the podium from stage right, guided by an aide. He was not a young man. His uniform fit like truth. He inclined his head to the applause and took his place a pace behind Kane. Kane lifted a hand. "Before the Admiral speaks, allow me a brief framing. Service is many things. It is sacrifice, certainly, but also decorum. We honor not individual stories." Sarah's voice, not amplified, still carried. "Sometimes one story teaches the many." Kane smiled without warmth. "We will proceed in order." Lily stood just off the microphone stand, the patch held at her waist. "Sir," she said to Kane, "there is something we ought to show before the speeches." "Not in the program," Kane replied. "We won't confuse the audience. It will make things clearer," Lily said. Kane stepped toward her, palm out. "Give it here. I'll handle any props." "It's not a prop," she said. Marin spoke softly behind her. "Let the young carry the old." The Admiral turned his head at that voice. His gaze slid toward the shadow where Marin stood. Some recognition stirred, but did not yet rise. Kane pivoted back to the microphone. "We'll continue. First, we recognize our organizers." Their leadership, Ortiz stood. "If leadership is truth, let the truth stand." The veterans around him murmured assent, low thunder without anger. Lily took one step onto the painted tape mark. The spotlight found the edge of her shoulder and climbed to her hands. She lifted the patch to chest height, steady and square. "Neighbors," she said, not waiting for permission, "I want you to see this." Kane's smile thinned. "Miss Tran, return to your seat." Lily did not lower her hands. "I'm a cadet," she said. "I am still learning. Today I learned you can laugh at what you don't understand. I don't want us to be that kind of town." She looked to the Admiral. "Sir, does this look familiar?" The Admiral took half a step forward before he knew he had moved. The light touched the lines beside his eyes. He raised his right hand out of habit, a practiced, perfect motion, and then it stopped mid-flight. His palm hovered. His breath caught. The square of cloth in Lily's hands had found him. That unit, he whispered not into the mic, but into the air shared by every ear. I remember. The crowd's noise unraveled into a deep hush. Even the flags seemed to settle. Somewhere behind the risers, a choir member realized she was holding her breath and let it go quietly like a note released. Kane reached for the mic as if grasping a rope. Yes, many units have patches. We appreciate the symbolism. Tonight, however, we celebrate the present, and as master of ceremonies, Sarah stepped forward from the foot of the stage. Mastery doesn't mean muzzling. Kane's smile returned lacquered. Miss Whitman, please. Ortiz cupped his hands. The Admiral knows. Let him speak. The Admiral's eyes did not leave the patch. His hand remained suspended, half salute, arrested by memory. We were pinned on a road that had no right to be a road. He said each word careful, like stepping stones. His aide touched his elbow. The Admiral stayed steady. A unit held the middle so the rest could pass. I saw men I did not command do more than I had the right to ask. Kane cut in. And all such stories belong to the tapestry, not the headline. We cannot elevate one. Then why Sarah called is your name always at the microphone? A ripple moved through the crowd. Not laughter. Not yet. Something like recognition turning toward daylight. Lily lowered the patch 2 inches as if to rest its voice and gather her own. I have a letter, she said. It was given to me to read, if there was ever a day people were ready to hear it. Kane spread his arms, benevolent and blocking. There is no letter in the program. Marin's voice, quiet, carried to the first rows, and then further on, the hush. Let the words walk. Lily unfolded a small sheet from her notebook. Her cadence was careful, a cadet measuring steps. To anyone who ever wore this square, she read, and to those who never had to because someone else did. We did not hold the middle to be seen. We held it so children could stand in fields like this and laugh too loud and learn later why they shouldn't. If you speak our names, do it in kitchens and church halls and library foyers where ordinary things live. If you ever carry this patch, carry it with 2 hands. The Admiral's suspended salute trembled and steadied. He let his hand fall to his side. His eyes shone the way brass shines after long polishing. Yes, he said. That's it. Kane's jaw worked. Fine sentiments, he said. But we must be practical. Ceremonies rely on order. I will now offer remarks on the importance of Ortiz's voice threaded through the mic without owning it. He didn't climb the stage. He didn't need to. Order without honor is a script, he said. Honor without order can still stand. Sarah added, we will make room. Kane's hands tightened on the podium. We have already... A child near the front tugged her mother's sleeve. Mama, is that the patch the man hugged? Her mother nodded. Yes. The drum major, sensing the square had changed, lifted his mace and stilled the band with a minute motion. In the pause, the choir leader at stage left, as if guided by a draft through old rafters, gave a single humming note. Others found it one by one. Sound gathered from behind the curtains like a lantern being lit. Kane tried again. As I was saying, Lily looked at him over the top edge of the patch. Sir, we are not trying to take anything from you. We are trying to give something back to them. He opened his mouth, then closed it. For a heartbeat, his eyes flashed something unguarded worry, annoyance, maybe fear, of a center that wasn't his. The Admiral spoke to the sound tech without turning from the patch. "May I say a word?" The tech nodded, and the mic found him. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. "When I was a younger officer," the Admiral said, "I learned to read maps and men. Maps tell you where to go. Men tell you whether you should. That square of cloth told us on a day I will not forget that we could pass because somebody else would hold." He looked at Lily. "Who entrusted you with it?" Lily glanced to the wings. Marin stood there, half in light, half in the familiar safety of edges. "He did," she said. The Admiral turned. He did it slowly, as if turning toward a sound he had been waiting to hear for a very long time. His eyes found Marin in the wing's shadow. The recognition came all at once like a bell finally struck. It was not the memory of a single face, but of a posture, a steadiness, a way of standing that could make a road where there wasn't one. Kane tried to reclaim the moment with authority. "Admiral, with respect, the schedule can wait," the Admiral said without heat and without looking away. He raised his hand again, not to salute this time, but as if asking the square itself for permission to speak for it. "There are forms," he said, "and then there are truths. Forms follow truths. Ortiz called, 'Let the choir keep that note.'" The hum held a soft beam of sound beneath the words. Sarah stepped 2 paces closer to the stage. "Town," she said, "look." Lily raised the patch higher. The spotlight caught the thread and made the faded colors bloom for a breath. The square seemed to drink light and give back memory. The cadets along the rail straightened young spines, learning a new line. One boy who had laughed that morning put his fingertips to his brow and then dropped them, not sure what to do next, but sure he would not laugh again. Kane's smile collapsed into something smaller. "We should proceed," he said almost to himself. "We are," Sarah told him. The Admiral drew a breath that sounded like a man stepping off a ferry onto solid planks. He kept his eyes on Marin, as if reading a long letter written without ink. The choir's hum deepened. The drumline waited, sticks poised like questions held for the right time. Wind worried the bunting once more and settled. The square had chosen its place for the day, and the day had chosen to listen. The Admiral, visibly shaken, turned toward Marin in recognition. The church hall had a way of holding voices without letting them rattle. Pews pushed back against the walls. Folding chairs faced a makeshift table draped in white. Organ pipes rose like a stand of trees. Someone had set a transistor radio beside the attendant's clipboard. Its speaker breathed a soft crackle, waiting. Lily stood near the front with the patch in both hands. The cloth felt lighter than it had under the stage lights, yet heavier in the way a story settles once it's been spoken aloud. Marin lingered by the aisle, unhurried, coat-buttoned edges favored. Ortiz sat in the second row, cap folded between his palms. Sarah arranged cups on a refreshment cart, the coffee already drawing a line of grateful neighbors. The radio cleared its throat. A warm announcer's voice returned them to the square they'd just left. And now a replay of the moment. The Admiral paused mid-salute. The recording clicked, then the hush arrived again, caught, bottled, released into the hall. No one moved while the quiet played back the quiet. When the clip ended, organ keys found a low brace of chords. The choir director lifted 2 fingers, and voices rose on amazing grace, not all at once, not perfect, human, and steady. It wasn't performance, it was a porch light left on. Victor Kane stood at the fringe of the chairs, hands at his sides. His tie was still straight. His certainty wasn't. A few committee members hovered near him with the politeness people keep for a man whose script has slipped. Sarah glanced at Marin. You want to say anything? No, Marin said. It's said. Lily nodded, hands tightening on the cloth. It is. A teenager in cadet blues broke from a small knot and came toward Marin. The boy stopped too far back, then corrected. Sir, he said. His voice had traded morning bravado for care. About this morning I laughed. I didn't know what I was laughing at. Marin inclined his head. Now you do. The boy blinked. I'd like to do better. Then you will, Marin said. Another cadet stepped up, then another words of apology arriving in simple shapes. I'm sorry, sir. We were wrong. We didn't understand. Marin received each as if accepting a folded note to be read later. He did not step forward. He didn't need to. Kane took a breath the room could hear. Ladies and gentlemen, he said, misunderstandings occur at public events. Emotions run high. We should remember the principle of order. He looked toward the committee table. We proceed with the original plan. Sarah poured coffee. The plan just improved. Kane's jaw worked. Miss Whitman. Sarah, she said, if you're going to scold me, use my name. Ortiz rose. Let's not scold at all, he said. Let's do the work. A councilwoman with a binder tucked under her arm came forward, heels careful on the hall's old wood. We're here to agree on what happens next, she said. Miss Tran Lily held up the patch so all could see. The room shifted toward it, bodies leaning as if light had gathered there. It shouldn't live in a pocket, she said. Not anymore. Not after today. She glanced at Marin. He answered with the smallest nod. Let the young carry the old. Ortiz pointed to the north wall where a bulletin board displayed flyers for suppers and blood drives. We could start there. A temporary home. Sarah wheeled the refreshment cart aside. I've got an empty frame. Shadow box comes later. Kane stepped in as if to block a door that wasn't there. We don't mount artifacts without proper provenance, he said. There are protocols. The councilwoman looked at him. Then we'll write one. Kane tried again. And the wording will be true, Sarah said. He searched for a new argument and found none. His eyes went to the windows. The late light had thinned and found dust in the air. It was a season for seeing what floats. From the back row, the cadet captain said, Sir, I'd like to speak. He faced the hall. We were out of step. We'd like to be in step now. He looked at Lily. May we help you, May? Lily said. Please. Two boys fetched a wooden easel from behind the baptistry. The councilwoman retrieved pushpins. Sarah reappeared with a frame, a simple rectangle borrowed from last month's bake sale poster. Ortiz set a small placard on the table. Service, honor, community. He had scribbled it with a black marker and a carpenter's neatness. Marin Sarah said gently, you can place it if you'd like. He shook his head. Let it speak for the team. Lily breathed once and crossed to the board. Hands steadier now, she centered the patch against the burlap and smoothed the corner as if tucking a quilt. The room kept still. Even the radio seemed to listen. She fixed the corners with 2 pins, then 2 more, a quiet cross. Kane took a half step forward. If I could just, the councilwoman touched his sleeve. Nothing sharp, nothing dramatic. Not this part, she said. He stopped. He looked smaller for a second, and then remembered his size. I'll be outside, he announced, as if his departure were required by policy. No one responded. He slipped along the aisle past an older couple who didn't notice him, and a group of cadets who did and looked away. The door made no sound closing behind him. The choir's last verse threaded the room and settled. Conversations restarted like birds returning to a tree after a passing truck. Scholarship, Ortiz said. Heads turned. For the kids who serve this town, he added. Not just uniforms, fire hall, library, clinic volunteers. A small start. Sarah folded her arms. Tips from Veterans Week concede it. The councilwoman checked her binder. We can match small donations from the Civic Fund. A teacher raised his hand. I'll organize essays. What does service sound like? Keep it simple. Keep it ours. The cadet captain said, we can host a car wash and actually wash the cars. Laughter warmed the edges of the room. The organist who taught second grade on weekdays nodded at the patch. We'll need a name. Lily said, call it what the letter called it. 2 hands. Marin let that land. Ortiz's mouth curved. 2 hands. Scholarship, he said. I like that. The radio crackled once more. The announcer returned softer now, as if he too had stepped into the hall. Our thanks to those who hold the middle, he said. Tonight's replay will air hourly for those who missed the moment. Sarah straightened the frame until it sat square. We'll build the proper box, she said. Glass, good wood, nothing showy. It doesn't need show, Marin said. It needs a home. The councilwoman lifted her pen. All in favor of a plaque and the 2-hand scholarship, aye. The room answered a layered chord. Opposed, she asked. Silence reached up and turned out the light on that question. Motion carries, she said, smiling. Lily looked at the patch, then at the chairs, then at Marin. Thank you. He shook his head lightly. Carry it well. The organ found a final amen. Folding chairs whispered as people stood. Grandfathers adjusted caps. Children laced fingers. Cadets straightened spines because that's what you do when a square of cloth has just taught you how. The councilwoman stepped to the front, voice firm but kind. Until the permanent case is built, she said, the patch will rest on this board in this hall where coffee is poured and news travels the right way. She looked out over the town and spoke the line they were ready to hear. The patch will rest where all may learn. 1 week later, the library foyer smelled of lemon oil and new paper. Sunlight laid tidy squares across the tile where school children had traced hopscotch with fingers earlier that morning. A handmade banner, service, honor, community hung above a corkboard newly faced with maple. The shadow box waited there empty but ready, its glass clear as a winter pond. Chairs filled the space between stacks and doorway. Townsfolk spoke in hushes because libraries teach that tone. The radio in the reference desk, small and faithful, played an oldies station low enough to be polite. On cue, the announcer's warm baritone slipped in, welcome to one quiet, thank you, our annual hour of voices and names. Lily Tran stood at the front with a small screwdriver and a folded note. The patch lay in her hands, already set into its frame, dark cloth against cream backing edges, stitched down with 2 careful lines. Close up, the thread showed its journeys. From the back row, Marin watched hatless again, coat brushed, but still itself. He preferred edges even here. Ortiz sat 3 chairs up, cap in his lap like a blessing. Sarah leaned against a column with a tray of paper cups. The coffee smelled like good mornings. The librarian, hair pinned with a pencil smile, easy, stepped to the side. Thank you for gathering, she said softly. We'll keep this simple and right. Lily nodded. Her voice carried just enough. A week ago we learned together, she said. We learned that laughter without understanding is light but not kind. We learned that a square of cloth can still hold the middle. She lifted the frame a little so the front rows could see. The room leaned in a human tide. "This patch carries voices we must never forget," she said. The radio added a soft bed of strings, then fell quiet again, as if the booth downtown knew how to be part of a room it couldn't see. From outside, a porch swing creaked on the library's small veranda, where a grandmother waited with a stroller rocking with habit. The councilwoman raised a hand. Before we place it, she said a word about the Two Hands Scholarship. She glanced at Sarah, then Ortiz. Tips from Veterans Week, small gifts the Civic Fund, and a cadet car wash have already filled the seed jar. Applications open this spring for students who serve at the fire hall, the clinic, the library, the food shelf. We start with what we have. Applause came like rain on leaves, soft everywhere at once. Lily looked down at the screwdriver. "Ready?" she asked the librarian. "Ready," the librarian said. Marin stood, though no one had asked him to. He did not step forward. The back row was far enough and near enough both. Sarah met his eye from across the aisle. She didn't nod. She didn't need to. Ortiz did not nod once the way men do when words would jostle something fragile. Lily turned to the board. She lifted the shadow box, set it to the pre-drilled holes, and steadied it with her left hand. With her right, she guided the first screw. The threads bit wood with a small, honest sound. Click, turn, seat, a sound made in barns and kitchens and school auditoriums for 100 years. The foyer listened. A child near the end of the row whispered, "Shh," to a cousin who had already gone quiet. Second screw. Click, turn, seat. The frame drew down snug against the maple. The patch settled into its new home as if the wall had been waiting, as if wood and cloth had planned this together. The librarian brought a simple brass plate and held it up for all to read, two hands. Below smaller held the middle. "Brought us through." "Words from a letter," Lily said. From the radio, the announcer returned softer now. "Tonight we begin a tradition. Each Veterans Week we'll gather stories in kitchens, church halls, and this foyer, and we'll read them in one quiet hour. If you have a name, bring it. If you have hands, help. A choir practice across the street must have opened its windows. A chord drifted in familiar and right, caught for a moment in the doorway's wood, then released." Lily lowered the screwdriver and laid her palm on the glass. "Thank you," she whispered. It wasn't a speech. It didn't need to be. The hush that followed wasn't empty. It was full. People breathe differently when they stand in front of a thing that tells the truth without raising its voice. A teenager in cadet blues, one of the morning's mockers, stepped forward with a small envelope. He cleared his throat. Our unit took up a collection," he said, "for the scholarship. It's not much." "It is," the librarian said. "Because it's yours." He handed the envelope to Lily, then stepped back quickly. Ears' pink posture squared by something gentler than command. The councilwoman turned her binder to a fresh page. "There's one more line to read into the record," she said. "Next Saturday, this library will host a table for oral histories. No microphones needed. Just chairs and time." "Time we have," Ortiz said. Sarah added, "Chairs we've got. Coffee, too." And then the fussing ended as fussing should. People simply stood and looked. Some crossed themselves. Some smiled and covered their mouths without knowing why. The patch, held now by 4 brass screws, and all the hands that had brought it here looked back without blinking. Maran felt the steadiness he knew best rise and settle. He had carried what he could. He had handed it to a town that would carry it further. He touched 2 fingers to his coat out of habit, and found only cloth and warmth. That was enough. Lily turned just in time to see him move toward the door. "Mr. Cole," she called, not loud, only true. He paused, then shook his head with the smallest gratitude. "Some thank yous are better left in the air." The bell over the library door made a soft brass note as he slipped out. On the veranda, the porch swing gave a friendly creak as he passed. The radio behind him faded to a song about walking home slower than you left, then to the announcer again. "One quiet thank you every year. We'll be here." Marin stepped into the late sun, which had the decency to be warm even in November. He turned down the sidewalk where the elm trees made a corridor of light and shade. No one watched him go, except the kind of noticing a town does without calling attention to itself. Inside the foyer, Lily stood with her palm still on the glass, feeling the cool settle. She looked at the letters, two hands, and then at the threads behind them. She took a breath, the kind you keep. Her voice found the line the day had been carving plain and exact. Sometimes the quietest salute carries the farthest echo. The library foyer glowed with afternoon light, the smell of coffee drifting in from the side table while an old radio hummed through its static with a choir's rehearsal in the distance. People had watched Kane's claims unravel and seen cadets once careless step forward with apologies. That justice allowed the community to lift its head higher, and relief finally settled across familiar faces. In Lily's hands, the simple badge now sealed in its case looked less like cloth and more like a thread in a quilt binding neighbors together with memory and kindness freely given. They knew not to mistake worn coats or quiet gestures again, for sometimes the strongest stand is the one without announcement, and every refill of coffee or folded note carried more weight than pride could claim. The board approved a plaque, and the scholarship fund began, and each year a radio hour called "One Quiet Thank You" would echo their promise. Sometimes the quietest salute carries the farthest echo.